In the English language, a sentence is simply a word or group of words that convey meaning. In writing, we need to be more specific, so we use the term clause instead. A clause is simply anything that contains a subject and a predicate. And you recall that in order for something to be a predicate, it must have a verb. There are two primary types of clauses, main or independent, and subordinate or dependent. A main or independent clause contains a subject and a predicate and can stand alone as a sentence. Let's look at some examples. Virgil ate the pancakes. We have a subject, Virgil, and a verb, ate. Here, the verb is the first word in the complete predicate, ate the pancakes. Therefore, we have an independent clause. Here's another one. Joaquin and Roberta danced the night away. Again, we have a subject, this time a compound one. Joaquin, Roberta, joined with a coordinating conjunction and. We also have a predicate, danced the night away. Because we have a subject and a predicate, we have an independent clause. Most sentences in the language, however, are not this simple. They'll contain both main and subordinate clauses. A subordinate clause contains both a subject and a predicate like all clauses, but it cannot stand alone. That's because a subordinate or dependent clause usually begins with a word that makes it dependent on the main clause. We'll call those words trigger words because they alert us to the presence of a subordinate clause. Those trigger words might be subordinating conjunctions like after, although, because, since, and while. They might be relative pronouns such as who, whose, whom, which, what, and that. And they might be relative adverbs such as when, where, and why. For a complete list, check out the resource box or look in your grammar books. Let's look at an example of a subordinate clause. After Maurice brought them home. It has a subject, Maurice, and it has a predicate, brought, but it can't stand alone. Although their parents disapproved. Again, we have a subject, parents, and we have the verb or the simple predicate, disapproved. But we know that this also can't stand alone. These are incomplete sentences, fragments. That's because each one only contains a subordinate clause. Remember that subordinate clauses cannot stand alone. They must be attached to a main clause in order to be grammatically correct. Let's see if we can find the main and the subordinate clauses in the following sentences. Virgil ate the pancakes after Maurice brought them to the table. You recognize the main clause, Virgil ate the pancakes. It has a subject, Virgil, and a predicate, ate the pancakes. All the rest is a subordinate clause, after Maurice brought them to the table. When we look for one of those words that trigger the subordinate clause, we find one right here, after. That subordinating conjunction is followed by the dependent clause, Maurice brought them to the table. It has a subject, Maurice, and a predicate, brought them to the table. So how do we know which one is the main clause and which one is subordinate? The subordinate clause will always begin with the trigger word. Let's switch the sentence around and see if anything changes. After Maurice brought them to the table, Virgil ate the pancakes. After Maurice brought them to the table is still the dependent clause because it still begins with that trigger word, the subordinating conjunction after. Let's look at one more. Joaquin and Roberta danced the night away, although their parents disapproved. Can you tell which clause is main and which one is subordinate? Start by looking for the trigger word. And there it is, although. That means that Joaquin and Roberta danced the night away is the main clause. Although their parents disapproved is the subordinate clause. Here's one more. The family that lives next door has a German Shepherd. This one is a little bit more tricky, but not if you get into the habit of looking for trigger words. Here, it's a relative pronoun, that. Often, when you have a relative pronoun, it serves as the subject of the clause. So my subordinate clause is, that lives next door. It's embedded within the main clause. The family has a German Shepherd. When you're trying to figure out which one is the main clause and which one is subordinate, you can also ask yourself, what is the most important idea in this sentence? That idea will be the main clause.